All right, Grand Risings Conscious Collective, because you are the collective conscience. My name is Marquise Black, and I'm gonna make this a short video. I will be going over an introduction to the universal laws and the seven Hermetic principles, as well as the popular law, which is the law of attraction. A lot of people believe that there are 12 universal laws. Some people believe that there are seven, and some people believe that there are more than 12 universal laws. Now, these universal laws also go by the names the laws of the universe, or natural law, or natural truths. Now, people who practice many practices like Buddhism, Wicca, metaphysics, or the law of attraction, as it's called, usually get involved in the universal laws of attraction. Now, let's bring in 2017 with a new understanding of these laws, and I'm pretty much going to tell you how you can take advantage of your own life by understanding how these laws work. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of depth on these laws. You can do that research on your own, but if you have no knowledge of the universal laws at all, this would definitely give you some insight on how to bring in your new year and take control of your finances, or take control of any issues you may be dealing with, or just want to know how to live a better life by understanding the seven hermetic principles and the laws of the universe. Now, regardless of what background you come from, as far as like religion or any spiritual teachings or any things like that, have you ever asked yourself what teaching is correct? There's thousands of books and thousands of teachings saying that, hey, this is right, that's wrong, and this and that. So, how do you know which one to believe? How do you know which one's correct? How do you know which one is telling the truth? Well, the answer to that question is that they pretty much all telling the truth. They're just different interpretations of the same story. And if you look back through history, all the modern scriptures and texts that we have today all derive from ancient teachings from thousands of years ago. The interpretations are just different. Some have been modified for the good, some have been modified for manipulation, aka the bad. Now, where did these universal laws come from? The truth is, there is no simple answer for those universal laws. But I can tell you some of these universal laws that I'm about to go over, you have most likely figured them out for yourself. Hence the term universal laws, because they apply to everybody's life. If you never learn about these in class or anything like that, you will learn through your life experiences. But this right here is just an overview in case you haven't realized that you've already been learning these universal laws. And if you do want some more information on these universal laws, you can also look for this book called The Kybalion, which is spelled Kybalion. This pretty much gives a lot of information, and it claims to be able to explain how to use these laws for your own benefit. All right. So the difference in beliefs, they all lead to the universal laws, which is going to bring me into my first universal law, which is called the law of divine oneness, or the law of oneness. Now, if you can see this slide right here, it says one light, many lamps. Pretty much, it has the seven main or well-known religions that are taught and practiced today, and it's pretty much saying that they all worship one God. They are all pretty much one religion. They all represent one mankind, and therefore the equality of men and women. And they also go hand in hand and coincide with science as well. And science is pretty much coming along, and they're pretty much starting to agree with religion, although they haven't before. Now, this states that everything and everyone in the universe is connected. Every thought and action affects everyone. So don't think that you doing something on your own has no effect on the person next to you, because it definitely does. If you hurt other people, we hurt ourselves. And if we hurt ourselves, we hurt other people. Have you ever, I can tell you from my own experiences where I've been in, situations where I may have made somebody feel bad. And, I've in turn hurt myself, and I start to feel bad and things like that. So definitely understand that nothing is separate. Separate is just an illusion that we feel when we're away from the source. And for to keep it, simple and at an understanding point for everybody, I'm just going to call it the source. I'm not going to call it whatever people choose to call it, God or anything like that. We're just going to call it the source. Um, and this next one isn't really a law, but it definitely goes hand in hand with the law of divine oneness, and it's called the golden rule. And I just found this picture I found on Google interesting, and it pretty much backs up what I was saying about the law of oneness. If you see, these are the seven main religions again, and they all have a quote from each of their religions, and they pretty much go hand in hand. You'll see the ancient teachings of Egypt pretty much say the nature only is good when it shall not do until another whatever is not good for its own self. And you'll see directly down at the bottom, you have Christianity that says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. They're pretty much saying the same thing. On the right side, at about 3 o'clock, you'll see Buddhism, which says, hurt not others with that which pains yourself. And right below that, you'll see the Islamic faith that says, no one of you is a believer until he desires for his brother what he desires from himself. You see, this goes back to that first slide I showed you where it says, one light, many lamps. They're all pretty much saying the same thing. So there's truth in all of these religions. So don't ever feel like, oh, I'm following the wrong thing. It's all about the universal message behind them, and it's less about the name or the label you have with your belief. So definitely keep that in mind when you're talking to other people about their beliefs, about their religion, about the names of their gods or their spirituality. The same goal is there, and that we need to come together as a divine oneness. All right, so as I go on to my next slide, I don't know if you can all see me moving my name around, but I'm just playing with it. As I go down to my next slide, this is pretty much the second law of the universe. It is called the law of vibration. And it pretty much states that nothing rests. Everything moves, everything vibrates, everything in the universe is but a vibration. Now, if you take a look at this picture here, you'll see that the first box starting from the right, well, actually, the first box on the left would be a representation of who you are. And let's say, for example, a situation takes place. The first thing that happens when a situation takes place is you have a thought about it, which is called our perception, how we view a situation. Now, from that perception, we can either, an emotion rises after that. We can either have fear or love, which are different degrees of the same spectrum, if you will. Now, once that emotion rises, it gives us an actual feeling. And emotions actually carry vibrations. And pretty much everything has vibrations. Uh, the physical world, the spiritual world, thoughts, emotion, and even atoms have vibration. Everything in the universe is made up of vibrations. Everything in every plane. So not just the physical plane, the material plane, but the spiritual plane, the mental plane as well. Those things have vibrations. Um, let's see. Unconditional love. Yeah, unconditional love has the highest emotional vibration there is, and fear has the lowest. Now, some people believe that the opposite of love is hate. I personally believe that it's fear, but you can take that however you want. They're pretty much representatives of the same thing, and they share the same degree. So remember that the highest emotional vibration is unconditional love, and the lowest emotional vibration that you could have is hate or fear. So always remember to keep your vibrations high, because higher vibrations trump lower vibrations. Plato, he was born in 427 BC or AD or something, I don't know. He has a quote that says, everything changes and nothing stands still. Uh, Nikola Tesla, born in 1856, died in 1943, also has a good quote that says, "The day science begins to study non physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than all previous centuries of existence. To understand the true nature of the universe, one must think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." So definitely keep that in mind. That's good information to keep in mind. Modern science, pretty much in quantum physics, they pretty much agree and they have proven that everything is pure energy vibrating at different frequencies. But even before then, the masters of ancient Egypt already figured this out long before modern science already has. So again, that goes back to that law of oneness where we're pretty much all saying the same thing, just a different way of looking at it. This principle also explains uh, the difference between manifestations of matter, energy, mind, and spirit. Remember, the higher the vibration, the higher it is on the scale. You may have spirits. Some people believe in spirits, some people don't. But whatever, spirits vibrate at a very high frequency, which is why you actually can't see them because they vibrate so fast that they appear to be at rest or they appear to be motionless. Kind of like when you're next to a car on the highway and you all are going like 80 miles an hour. And if you look at the wheels on the car next to you, they appear to be motionless, like they're not even spinning at all. That's because they're vibrating so fast that they look like they're at rest. The same thing applies with low vibrations. You can have a vibration that vibrates at such a low frequency that it looks like it's not even moving at all. That can go for spirits who have very low energy, and that can go for material things like a wall, for example. You know what I'm saying? Nothing is really solid in this world. It's all just pretty much vibrations condensed or slowed down or sped up. So let me go ahead into this next slide right here. All right, the law of action. This is pretty much self-explanatory. I won't stick on this too long because it's like I said, it's pretty much self-explanatory. It does go hand in hand with the law of attraction, and it's pretty much saying that thoughts are not enough to manifest something. It must be accompanied by action. And knowledge alone is not power. You must act on whatever it is you want to conceive, you want to accomplish, or something like that. So if you take a look at this picture, it says thinking about your goal is not enough. You'll see a person standing at the bottom of a mountain, and at the top is a trophy. Now that can be a metaphor for success, a new relationship, or whatever you want it to apply to. And although you must use the law of attraction, which I will get to later and explain exactly what the law of attraction is, to get there, you can't just think, "Oh, I'm going to be successful. I'm going to be successful," and motivate yourself mentally. You actually have to take the steps necessary to getting to that goal. So definitely keep that in mind. We all have to um, work towards our goals if we want to see different things. I'm sorry, I don't even know if y'all see my screen right now. Let me go back. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the next one because that was a short one and pretty much self-explanatory. Um, all right, so this one may be a little confusing, so definitely bear with me as I try to explain this one the best way I can. This is called the Law of Correspondence, and it has two of my favorite quotes. But I'll only talk about one. As above, so below. Um, as below, so above. So, and this law pretty much, the law of correspondence pretty much says that in order to change the world, we must change ourselves. Um, the idea that the world we live in is a manifestation of our own thoughts and our internal feelings. And it pretty much is like however you view the world, however you think about the world, is pretty much how your world is going to be. As within, so without. That's where that quote comes into play. So definitely remember to keep a positive mindset about things. And as we go further along in this video, you're going to see that a lot of these laws pretty much sound familiar or sound similar. Like they're pretty much saying the same thing. They pretty much go hand in hand with each other. So that's something we you're gonna you're gonna figure out, and we definitely have to keep in mind. Um, if we control our thoughts, we can create our own environment. So if something happens and you don't like it and you start to feel negative about it and you just say, "Oh man, the world is such a horrible place. There's always bad things happening." Now, granted, energy is going to come however it comes. You can't fully control all of the energy around you. But if you start to think like that, you're going to notice that things uh, become more negative, and you're not going to be content with your life because you are perceiving the world around you to be that way. So we definitely have to start looking at the world around us in a more positive light and being more positive about the world, period. Now, this principle pretty much embodies the truth that there is always a correspondence between the laws and phenomena of the various planes of being in life. The old Hermetic axiom ran in the words "as above, so below, as below, so above," and the grasping of this principle gives one the means of solving many dark paradoxes and hidden secrets of nature. There are planes beyond our knowing and understanding, but when we apply this principle of correspondence to them, we're able to understand much that would otherwise be unknowable to us. So, this principle of the universe, of universal application and manifestation on various planes in material, mental, and spiritual universe, it is a good universal law to just definitely keep in mind. Always stay positive, and then you'll start to look at your world in a more positive way. All right, so let me go on to this next slide right quick. All right, this is a very popular one, and although it is very popular, believe it or not, there are a lot of people who actually don't understand how this works. Now, this in here, this law is called the law of cause and effect, uh, more popularly known as karma or the law of karma. It is also known as action and reaction or the law of equilibrium. Now I'm going to go ahead and read the slide for you, and it says, also called the law of equilibrium, every action will have its corresponding consequences, whether favorable or unfavorable. It applies to all existing beings. Personal karma operates on a physical, emotional, and mental levels. The only decree of karma, an eternal and immutable decree, is absolute harmony in the world of matter as it is in the world of spirit. It is not, therefore, karma that rewards or punishes, but it is we who reward or punish ourselves according to whether we work with, through, and along with nature, abiding by the laws of which that harmony depends on, break them. Now, nothing happens by chance. Every action or thought has an equal and opposite reaction. Kind of sounds similar to Newton's law. And it also corresponds with the law of oneness because everybody believes in this to some extent, however you choose to describe it. But it enforces why we must take responsibility for our own actions. So if something bad happens, you can't get mad at the universe or God or the source when just last week you did something bad to someone else. So we definitely have to keep in mind that karma does come back to us, and that is also how vibrations work. Now you see how it goes in hand with the law of oneness because we all agree to some extent, whether we've had religious teachings or not. It's definitely going to come back, and it also goes hand in hand with the laws of vibration. Once you get to a point of understanding how karma works, you can pretty much dominate the world around you. Now, again, like I said before on the last slide, you can't completely control 100% all the vibrations that come your way, but you can definitely keep a good amount of positive vibrations and karma around you if you are giving those vibrations off. This is pretty much how alchemy works, and alchemists understand how to use these this physical and material plane around them. Um, so just remember, overview of that. Keep in mind, outside energy is not completely avoidable, and technically there is no good or bad. It's just how you interpret the situation, um, and that leads to the law of attraction too, which I'll talk about in just a second. All right. So as we go on to this next law, I don't even know what number of laws I'm on. I'm kind of just going along as I click on the next slide. But this one is also self-explanatory in a way, kind of like the law of action. But this one is called the law of compensation. And like the other one, I'm going to read the screen for you, and it pretty much says this law is an arm from cause and effect being applied to abundance and blessings that come into our lives. Compensation is the visible effects of our deeds. It can show up as gifts, money, friendships, and other blessings given to us due to our actions. And everybody understand it. So again, you see how this ties in with the law of oneness, and also the law of karma. So if you do good things, the universe, the source, will compensate you for those things. Um, the world is self-organizing and self-correcting, and that's pretty much how it works. It has its own intellectualness. So no good deed goes unrewarded, whether it's in this life or another lifetime. Now, I definitely want to make a comment on this law of compensation real quick before we go on to the next one. And it's pretty much about being rewarded in this lifetime or the next. Some people believe that you get your compensation in that same lifetime, and it wouldn't be fair or wouldn't make much sense to be compensated for something you did in this lifetime, in your next lifetime. And then you have other people who believe that, hey, the same thing applies. It should apply for rewards if it should apply for punishment as well. If you do something bad, you could live your entire life and not be punished for the bad deeds that you did. But you've also heard the quote, no bad deed goes unpunished. So, in your next lifetime, you may appear as a dog. And I'm not saying dogs are bad things. I'm just saying that some people look at the universal laws in this way. Sometimes you may walk around and you may hear somebody say, when they look at a dog, they say, "Oh, I wonder what that person did in their last lifetime to become a dog." And that pretty much describes the punishment that someone will receive, of not doing something good in their last lifetime. Now, I'm not saying that I totally agree with that or disagree. I'm definitely just, letting you know how other people view the law of compensation. So let me go on to the next slide. All right. So right here we have. Did I skip one? I don't know. All right. So right here we have the most popular law, the universal truth. And this one is called the law of attraction, the infamous law of attraction. I'm sorry, the famous law of attraction. It's not infamous at all. But it pretty much states that like attracts like. Whatever you focus on grows, whether it's a good focus or a bad focus. So, how to use the law of attraction? This is pretty important. You can attract whatever you want with your thoughts, what you say, and what you do. That pretty much goes hand in hand with every other law, and it corresponds with the law of. I'm sorry, excuse me. It also corresponds with the law of vibration. So you can use like visuals, lists, and other tools for a petition. And what I mean by petition is what you're asking for. So let's say I'm gonna tell you personally what I do. I take a note card and I write what I want to achieve or what I want to accomplish on that note card. On one side of the note card. And then on the back of the note card, I'll write I'll write three sentences. I'll write ask and it shall be given to you. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. Um and the third one. What's the third one? Let me look real quick. I actually got it under my pillow. So again, those quotes are, oh yeah, it's seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you, and ask and it shall be given to you. So that's what I write on the reverse side of the note card. And once I write that on the reverse side, I'll every morning when I wake up, I'll read that card 3 times to myself. And then I'll read the reverse side of it 3 times to myself. And then I'll put it back under my pillow. Now, a lot of people don't understand, but that's actually a ritual. That is actually how you use the law of attraction to your advantage. You're asking the universe for something, and then, eventually you will receive it because you're being consistent in attracting the things that you want. Those things carry vibrations. Remember, there are multiple things that carry vibrations: your thoughts, your emotions, what you do, and a few other things as well. So this technique generates the vibration needed for it to happen. So you can do that with anything. Some people do it with candles, like those 7 day candles, those little long tubes. They may write in Sharpie marker, you know, good affirmations like success, money, or things they want, or things they. And some people aren't as specific as I am with my note card. Some people just write positive affirmations on it and says good things. They don't ask for anything in particular. And then what they do is they burn the candle for 7 days straight. Now that is also a ritual, and rituals aren't always, no, at all. Rituals aren't bad things. I know a lot of people think that rituals are bad things, but we practice rituals as people all the time, whether you realize you're practicing a ritual or not. So definitely keep that in mind, and that's how the law of attraction works. But also, one thing you should keep in mind is that you have to be patient. You definitely have to be patient with the things you're asking for. Some people create vision boards. That's also a ritual for what you want. On a vision board, you pretty much put on there, people cut out of magazines and they put on those vision boards things that they want to accomplish or things that they want to get. And, eventually it manifests. And yeah, I see Jalil in the comments. Shouts out to you, man. Prayer is definitely a ritual. That's a good one. Prayer is also a ritual. So when you wake up in the morning and you pray, you're practicing the law of attraction. You're inviting into your life something that you are asking for. So you definitely have to be consistent with that, and eventually you will get those things. But I say be patient because things like anxiety, impatience, and frustration mess up that process. So when applying the law of attraction, be sure not to be impatient with what you're asking for. Don't become frustrated, and try to keep as many positive thoughts as possible when trying to manifest whatever it is you want into your life. I'm not going to read the things that are on this slide. I'm pretty sure I've been on this page long enough for you all to read them for yourselves, or you can pause the video or go back. So I'm going to go ahead to the next slide right here. Now, I found this picture online, and this is a very nice picture that I had liked. So I definitely put it right here. And this picture represents a little known universal law called the law of the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. I know they are like, what? What is that? What did he say? Now, this law pretty much states that we have the ability to change the circumstances of our lives. So, although this is a little known law, it's definitely one of hope. It gives people hope about whatever situation they may be going through. Remember that, like I said earlier, higher vibrations always have the ability to transmute lower vibrations. They always have the ability to consume or defeat or trump lower vibrations. So always remember to keep your vibration high. And when lower vibrations come around you, because you have a higher vibration, you can always trump that vibration. Or if you yourself, if you have, a lower vibe, remember that you're never trapped in the vibration that you're in. If you're sad, if you're going through something, you're stressed or depressed, you're not going to stay in that vibration forever because it doesn't correlate with a higher vibration. You can actually come out of your lower vibration. The universe always presents an opportunity to growth, for growth, and for you to come out of whatever situation you're in. Which is actually why I don't believe in things like eternal burning or hell. Actually, a lot of people believe that you go to hell, you're there, and you're going to burn forever for something that you did. But hell is actually a low vibration, and you always have the opportunity to come out of it. Now, it may not be in this lifetime that you come out of it, like the law I was talking about before, the law of compensation. Let's say, for example, you do bad things in this lifetime, and if you were to die and you are reincarnated at a lower vibration because of something you did in your previous lifetime, don't feel like you're going to be stuck in that frequency, in that vibration. What you do at that time, you can also move up on the scale as well and have a higher vibration. And you can use this, you can think of it this way. If anybody's ever heard of the seven chakras. Now, if you notice at the bottom of the seven chakras, if you were to align them vertically, at the bottom is the root chakra, which is the starting point, which is the base, and that color is represented by red. And at the very top, you have the crown chakra, which is blue. I believe it's a light blue color. So look at these seven chakras as different stages of life. And if you're at the crown chakra, that could be a representation of success or a representation of heaven. And if you're at the bottom, the root, that could be a representation of failure or fear or hell. Now, let's say if you're in the middle, you're probably like at the solar plex or the heart chakra. What you're doing in your lifetime determines whether you're going to go up on that scale in your next lifetime or whether you're going to go down that scale in your next lifetime. So remember that you want to live your life attracting more positive vibrations and higher frequencies so that in your next lifetime you can move closer to the heaven that you're looking for. And eventually when you get to that state, that heaven, you can no longer go back down, or you wouldn't, because you would be obviously on a different plane. You wouldn't be in the material the material world. Oh, I'm sorry, I think I went back. All right. So definitely remember that there's different stages of reincarnation. And again, this law is called the perpetual transmutation of energy. And this also means that energy at some point in time will always take form in the material form or the physical sense. So always remember that, like, we ourselves, before we were actually physical, were once energy. And now we change from a spiritual plane into a material plane. So energy always goes through those 10 transitions of spiritual or spirit into the material plane, and then out again, and then in again. All right, so this is also another popular one. Oh, and about that, the perpetual transmutation of energy, there was a quote that Albert Einstein said. He was born in 1879, died in 1955. He said, "The most important decisions we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or hostile universe." Um, but yeah, this one right here is also one of my favorites. It's not my number one favorite, but it's one of them, and it's a popular known one. It's called the Law of Relativity. And pretty much the slide says, how long a minute is depends on which side of the bathroom door you're on. Now, I found this slide and I thought that was a really good one because it really put relativity into perspective for me. If you're in the bathroom relieving yourself, you could be like, oh man, letting time go by. Say, I've been waiting all day to use the bathroom, and somebody could be on the other side like, oh my gosh, when is this person coming out the restroom? I've been waiting all day. You know what I mean? So, and it could seem like forever to them, but it's pretty much about what's relative to you. All things are relevant. All things are relevant. I'm sorry. Nothing is relevant to us. Nothing is good or bad unless we make it relative to us. Now, I really started to understand this law when I was working at Quick Trip back in 2014. Is when I actually started paying attention to this law. Well, I wasn't paying attention to it all. It was something I was thinking about, but I didn't know that this law was actually a law and it had a name, which goes back to what I said at the beginning of the video, that we're going to learn these laws or we use them sometimes in our lifetime and don't even know that we're using them. Hence the term universal because they're for everyone. But when I was working at Quick Trip, I used to have a lot of negative thoughts. I'd be on my way to work. I would make up thoughts in my mind that are just negative for no reason. And I'm like, why am I always having these negative thoughts? And eventually I learned how to start coming over these negative thoughts. And the law of relativity pretty much says that we use what we feel is important to us, and we don't use what we don't feel is important to us. So when I would have these negative thoughts, I would practice at work, like saying, "Hey, the next time somebody says something to me, before I just react to it, I'm going to evaluate. I'm literally going to evaluate in my mind, do I need this? you know, do I need this energy? Because at that point, I understood that everything created a type of energy for you. So if somebody were to say, hey, you taking too long on my food. What's taking you so long? I could always evaluate. At that point, I would evaluate how they said it and what was their intent by telling me that. And I could determine whether I wanted this to be good or whether I wanted it to be bad. Remember, it's all about perception, how you choose to look at the situation. And then if I decided to look at it as a good thing, I could say, hey, I need to hurry up. I need to be proactive. Like that. Or I could take it as a negative and say, oh, this person rushing me. They're impatient. I'm doing the best job I can. You know what I mean? So it's definitely all about how you look at it. And once you decide what it is and what their intent was behind it, the next thing I would ask myself was, do I need this? Is this relative to me? So if I felt like this information was relative, I would react to it. Now I can react to it, and now for something to be relative, it doesn't mean good. Relative just means it relates to you. You're going to use it, or you can use it. Bad things can be relative to you as well. So if somebody says, hurry up, if I decide to react in a negative way to what they said, then negativity now becomes relative to me because I'm choosing to use it. Even because I don't even be, even because I choose not to be positive about it or I don't like it, that doesn't mean that I'm not using it. So if you don't want to use or be consumed by a negative thought, you have to make sure that it's not relative to you by not responding to it, not reacting to it. Um, Another example I wanted to bring up real quick is, how do we empathize with people when we've never experienced something that they have experienced? Sometimes you may get women who say, oh, you don't know what it's like to have a child. So you don't know how being a mother feels. Or you may have a guy who says, oh, you've never lost someone. You never lost this person or whatever that's close to you. So you don't know how it feels. Well, is that really true? Think about it. We're able to understand people without going through exactly what they're going through. How interesting would your relationship be if you had to go through the exact same experiences as someone else to empathize with them and understand where they are coming from? And now, if you believe in reincarnation, at some point in your life, you have probably experienced the loss of a loved one or having a child. And those experiences stick with us, which is why, even though we don't remember them, but emotionally we do, which is why we're able to empathize with people who may have lost a child or have lost a loved one. This is the way the universe relates, because imagine how difficult it would be to experience every negative thing on the planet just to understand where somebody is coming from. Um, which uh, goes back to what laws that go to. I can't remember which law that's relative to. Um, Okay. All right, yeah. So I pretty much just I don't remember which law that was relative to, but again, if you think about them, like I said before, they're all relative to each other in some way. So like I said, nothing in our lives has any meaning unless it relates to us. The lessons we set ourselves in this life are based around this law. How could we empathize with, losing a child if we never lost them ourselves, or having our heartbroken and things like that? Of course, we don't experience all these before, like I said before, because it would just be entirely too much. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much sums up that entire law. But on to the next slide. All right, which one is this? Natural law expression. Okay, this is my favorite, my favorite universal truth, and this one is called the law of polarity, or the principle of polarity, however you want to look at it. And this pretty much states that everything has an opposite. Um, you got love, and then you have hate or fear, however you would want to look at that. You have dark, and you have light. You have success, you have failure, you got happiness, you got sadness. And it's pretty much saying that one cannot be in existence without the other. If you look at the slide, you'll see that there's knowledge and there's ignorance, where your knowledge is where you're seeking the truth. Ignorance is where you're refusing the truth, which is hence the root word ignore if you read ignorance. Sovereignty, which is internal monarchy, or confusion, which is internal anarchy. You got freedom, and then you have control. You got good and you got bad, or order and chaos. So their opposites are, they're pretty much all the same. The only thing that's different about them is their degree. So if you get what I'm saying, it kind of makes you wonder, do opposites really exist? Do things like hot and cold really exist? And I know that was one of Einstein's arguments. Like, can you really determine if something is hot or cold? Do bad and good really exist? Can you measure how evil something is or how good something is? Because he believes that if you can't measure it, then it really doesn't exist. Hot is the same thing as cold. The only difference is how you choose to perceive it. The only difference is pretty much their degree, but they're on the same spectrum, just on different ends. Pain is the same thing as pleasure. The only thing that's changing about it is our perspective. Polarity allows us to experience both sides of something in order to create balance. And without it, how would we be able to appreciate the life we have if we didn't get the full experience? How would you know what it's like to love somebody if you weren't afraid of something, or if you didn't hate something? You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying you should hate anybody, because I don't believe that hate is the opposite of love, but some people do. Um, so I'm gonna read to you really quick. There's also some more information I actually have on polarity. I have it written down because this was a lot of information. But yeah, uh, it pretty much says this principle embodies the truth that everything is dual. Everything has two poles. Everything has its pair of opposites, all of which were old Hermetic axioms. It explains that old paradoxes that have perplexed so many people have been stated as follows. It says, thesis and antithesis are identical in nature, but different in degree. Opposites are the same, differing only in degree. The pair of opposites may be reconciled. Extremes meet, everything is and isn't. And this is, I ain't gonna lie, this is something I've always thought about. Like, is something or isn't something, but everything is and isn't at the same time. All truths are but half truths. Every truth is half false. There are two sides to everything, etc., etc. It pretty much explains that everything in the universe has poles, there are opposite aspects, and that other opposites are really only two extremes of the same thing, which many varying degrees are between those. So, to illustrate, you got heat and you got cold. Although opposites are really the same thing, the difference consisting merely of degrees. And if you look at your thermometer and you can discover where heat terminates and cold begins. There's no such thing as absolute heat or absolute cold. The two terms heat and cold simply indicate varying degrees of the same thing, and that same thing which manifests as heat and cold is merely a form, a variety, and a rate of vibration. So, heat and cold are simply just the two poles that which we call heat, the phenomena and attendant that you know is hot as fuck. so, so yeah, on to the next slide. All right, this one is called the Law of Rhythm. Now, I wouldn't say that this is really a popular one, but it is very, very, very important. Now, a quote from the Kabbalah says, "Everything flows. Excuse me. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swings, manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates." So, as you can see on the slide, it says, this law describes to us that everything vibrates and moves to a rhythm. Each rhythm establishes seasons, cycles, stages, development, and patterns. Whenever you do an activity continuously, it becomes a rhythm called habit. Then it is permanent. If you don't use your mind, you become part of the rhythm in the environment. Now, this is pretty important because it's obvious that this is a universal law because as you can see, everything around us has a pattern that it takes, even like economies and things like that. This principle pretty much embodies the truth that in everything there's manifested a measured motion to and from something, a flow and an inflow, a swing backwards and a swing forward. The pendulum like movement is kind of like a tide and a flow, like a high tide and a low tide. But between the two poles, um, in accordance with the principle of polarity that I just. I'm sorry, my message is going off again. Like there's always an action and there's always a reaction, an advance and a retreat, a rising and a falling or sinking. Um, this interferes with the universe, the sun, the worlds, men, animals, mind, energy, and matter. This law is manifest in the creation and destruction of worlds, and its rise and fall of nations, pretty much in all things. So you'll notice that everything in life has a pattern, not just seasons, but the economy as well. Our economy has patterns that they will eventually visit. And this is how the whole purpose of this rhythm is for us to have a balanced lifestyle. Imagine how hectic life would be if we didn't know when winter was coming. You know what I mean? If we didn't know when spring was coming. So with those type of patterns, we can kind of predict how the economy will fluctuate as well and how to prepare for certain things. So it allows us to experience life in a more balanced way, which is why I said the law of rhythm is really, really, really important. All right, so this one is called the law of gender. This is the last of the 12 universal truths. But I do have to I also touched on 6 of the 7 Hermetic principles, and I'm going to touch on the last Hermetic principle after this one, after I read this one. But the law of gender, it's pretty much saying that, everything has like a feminine side and a masculine side. A quote out of Kabbalah says, "Gender is in everything. Everything has a masculine and a feminine principle. Gender manifests on all planes." So there's a quote from the Kabbalah, and this principle pretty much embodies the truth that there's gender manifested in everything. The masculine and the feminine principles are always working. Now, this is not only true for the physical plane, but for the mental plane and the spiritual plane as well. On the physical plane, the principle manifests itself as what we like to call sex. We call our masculine and feminine sex, but on higher planes they take higher forms, but the principle is still the same. No creation, physical, mental, or spiritual, is possible without this principle of masculine and feminine. Every understanding of his law, every understanding of the law kind of throws light on a subject that we've all thought about. So the principle of gender works in every direction of generation, regeneration, and creation. Everything and every person contains 2 elements or 2 principles, or this great principle within it, within him or her. Every male has a female element, and every female contains male principles as well. Now, if you understand this philosophy of mental and spiritual creation, generation, and regeneration, then you understand how this law works. Now, the sun may be like masculine, for example, and the moon may be feminine. Even like if you take a square and a square has four sides, four corners, and it has four lines. But what is the degree of a square? 360 degrees. Now, a circle doesn't have any sides or any lines. It just has curves, which will represent the feminine quality or whatever. Which, but how many degrees is a circle? It is also 360 degrees, and that kind of represents the circle represents the spiritual plane. Like a plane without boundaries. That's why it has no sides. And on the masculine plane, which is Earth, we have corners, we have sides. There are lines. There are things that can actually be defined, although they are different ends of the same spectrum. You get what I'm saying? They're just described totally different. So I hope y'all see how that relates to all the other laws that I've outlined. Now I'm almost reaching an hour. I pretty much touched on all the principles except for one, which is the principle of mentalism. Now, that one, you gonna have to bear with me on that one as well, because the principle of mentalism is kind of really hard to explain. But before I get there, I also wanted to speak real quick on this side law. It's kind of like goes in with like the law of attraction, but it's called the law of probability. This is not one of the 12 universal laws. It can be, some people believe that there's more than 12, but it's pretty much saying that nothing's going to happen if you're not in a position for it to happen. It has it in order for it to happen. It has to be probable. Think about it like if you buy like a lottery ticket, right? What's the chances that you win the lottery? Probably like slam to none, or like 1 in a million. But think about if you don't buy a lottery ticket at all. What's the chances of you winning a lottery then? None, exactly. So in order for something to happen while trying to use the law of attraction, it has to make sense. You have to be in a position for it to happen. And that's why the law of probability kind of relates to the law of action as well. The same goes for health issues. Though we live in an age where we got tremendous medical advancements, some things are still impossible. You're not suddenly going to regrow a limb. We got to work with the limits of our times. And of course, these boundaries will change and expand as mankind, evolves and progresses. Now, there's a quote from Heraclitus that says, "Nothing endures but change." And that pretty much backs up that statement that I was making. Things have to be probable. They can't be improbable for them to happen. Um, yeah, everything comes at the right moment. You pretty much just gotta be patient about it. But like I was saying, on to mentalism, and this is the last one, and then we'll be done. So hopefully I can keep it under 6 minutes, 5 minutes, or whatever. So this principle pretty much embodies the truth that all is mine. It explains that the all is pretty much anything in the material world, like energy, phenomena, anything that can manifest or appear outward. Anything that's apparent to our material senses pretty much is the all. But yeah, it explains pretty much that the all is spirit, which in itself is unknowable and undefinable, but which may be considered and thought of as like a universe, infinite, or a living mind. It also explains that all the phenomena of the world and the universe is simply a mental creation of the all, or like I said, the material manifestations or whatever, even material phenomena, even though it's not whatever. All right, anyway, subject to the laws of what was I saying? What was I saying? Okay, yeah. So I was pretty much saying a mental creation of the all is pretty much subject to the laws of the world or the universe or whatever, or anything that exists within it. So this principle pretty much establishes that the mental nature of the universe explains that. Oh my god, I'm sorry, I hate explaining this one, but to summon this one up for you, this one is really hard for me to explain. It's pretty much saying that, look at it this way: everything that exists in this universe, even like phenomenon, all comes from a intellectual source. Like I said before, you can call the source whatever you want to call it, but think about why a spiritual plane would represent or have feminine qualities and the earth would have masculine qualities. Who made them that way? Why does the sun have masculine qualities and why does the moon have feminine qualities? Why are all these natural laws in place? So it's pretty much saying that something created these, and that's why we call it the all. So everything that we know of that exists that we can explain, or even things that we see but can't explain, all come from mentalism or the source. Pretty much that's what it's saying. So like that's one of the people have always wondered about, like, how was all this stuff created? And this is like a spiritual thing, but it's unknowable and it's undefinable. You can't really define or explain where it actually comes from. Even if you go back to the Big Bang Theory, a person can explain to you the Big Bang Theory all day and say, "Hey, yeah, there was hydrogen, in space. There's a little bit of water, and then when these molecules get close together, they condense, and then when hydrogen condenses into like an infinite form, it explodes, it expands, and there's this plasma and all this stuff. Thus, the stars were created. Stars explode. Their dust and their water create its own magnetic field, and they condense again. Then, thus, the sun is born. They can always explain that, but they can't explain to you where it all comes from. Where did the first piece of hydrogen come from? You get what I'm saying? Like, is space limitless? Is it infolding or is it folding outward? It's all mentalism, and that's pretty much what this law is pretty much saying. So, again, my name is Marquise Black. Thank you for tuning in and watching this introduction to the 7 Hermetic principles and the 12 universal laws. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel. I will be doing a lot more videos and sharing a lot more knowledge. I'm learning as well. I am not an expert, so I don't want anybody to think that I'm an expert. I'm learning at the same time that you're learning. I'm pretty much just sharing with you everything that I'm learning. Like I said, like this video, leave a comment, ask me questions, let me know what you would like for me to speak about next. And until then, peace and much love as I try and end this video because I'm not sure how. All right, yeah, peace out.